All right, today we're going to talk about a total musical rebel, an instrument that looks like it belongs in one family, but secretly it plays for a completely different team. This is a story about invention, breaking the rules, and, honestly, the birth of some of the coolest music you'll ever hear.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a quick question for you. What instrument out there sounds, well, almost human? Like it can sing, it can cry, it can even shout, but it's made of shiny metal. Yep, you guessed it, the saxophone. And trust me, its backstory is every bit as interesting as its sound. So let's dive in. All right, so first things first, what even is a saxophone? I mean, you look at it and it seems pretty obvious, right? It looks like it should be hanging out with the trumpets and trombones and the brass section, but it's got a pretty big secret. And this is where the sax has a bit of an identity crisis. See, its body is made of brass, and that's what gives it that big, powerful sound. But it's not a brass instrument at all. Nope, it's actually a woodwind. And it all comes down to this one tiny piece of wood called a reed. The sound starts when that reed vibrates, kind of like a clarinet, not from buzzing your lips into a mouthpiece like you would with a trumpet. So how does that all come together to make music? Well, it's pretty simple actually. Step 1, the player breathes into the mouthpiece. That air rushes past the reed and makes it vibrate super fast. Those vibrations then travel all the way down the saxophone's metal body, and boom, that's the sound you hear. And to change the note or the pitch, the player just presses different keys. Each key opens or closes a hole, which changes how far the sound has to travel. A shorter trip means a higher note, and a longer trip means a lower note. Easy, right? And get this, the saxophone isn't just one instrument, it's a whole family. Now, in jazz, you're mostly going to hear these four main types. You've got the soprano, that's the smallest one with the highest pitch. Then there's the alto, which is probably the one you've seen the most. It's super popular for students. Next up is the tenor, which has that classic, deep, rich jazz sound everyone loves. And finally, the big guy, the baritone or bari sax. This one gives you those super low, rumbly notes. Okay, so we know what it is and how it works, but how on earth did an instrument invented in Belgium make its way across the Atlantic to become, like, the very voice of American jazz? It's a pretty wild story. Let's get into it. You know, the saxophone wasn't an overnight star, not at all. It was invented way back in the 1840s by a guy named Adolphe Sax. For decades, it was just kind of hanging out in the background, mostly in military bands. But then came the 1920s, and jazz musicians in America heard something special in it. They realized it could sound like a human voice. It could wail and cry and sing in a way other instruments just couldn't. It was perfect for the new emotional music of jazz. Fast forward to the 1940s and the bebop revolution, this new, super fast, really complex style of jazz. Suddenly, the saxophone wasn't just another instrument in the band. It was the star. Of course, an instrument is just a piece of metal and wood until a real artist picks it up and breathes life into it. So let's talk about the legends, the masters who really showed the world what the saxophone could do. First up, let's look at the masters of the alto sax, the one known for that quick, soaring sound. And you absolutely cannot talk about the alto sax without talking about Charlie Parker. They called him Bird, and for good reason. He played so fast, so beautifully, it was like he was flying. His playing was on a whole other level. Nobody had ever heard anything like it. He was one of the main inventors of that bebop style, and he basically changed the rules for how jazz was played, forever. All right, let's switch over to the tenor sax. This is the powerhouse, the one with that deep, soulful voice. And when you talk about the tenor, one name stands above the rest: John Coltrane. The man was a giant. His skill was just unbelievable. And it wasn't just natural talent, it came from pure dedication. We're talking hours and hours of practice, every single day. He pushed the saxophone to places it had never been before, and musicians are still trying to catch up to the ideas he was exploring. So you hear about legends like Parker and Coltrane, and you wonder, what were they actually doing that was so groundbreaking? Well, it all comes down to one key idea, the absolute heart of jazz: improvisation. Okay, so what in the world is improvisation? It sounds complicated, but it's not. It's just making up music on the spot. Seriously, instead of reading sheet music, a jazz player is creating a new melody, right there, in that moment. That's why every single live jazz show is a one-of-a-kind experience. It will never happen the exact same way again.
Probably the best way to imagine it is to think of it like a conversation, right? The bass and drums set the topic, the piano adds some ideas, and then the saxophone jumps in and tells its own story. But instead of using words, they're using notes. It's all happening live, totally spontaneous, and 100% creative. So from those old military bands all the way to the biggest concert stages on the planet, the saxophone has had an amazing ride. But its story isn't over. Let's check out where the sax fits in today. It's still the king of jazz, for sure. But the sax's amazing voice has popped up everywhere. You've definitely heard it in pop songs on the radio, in classic blues, and even in high-energy rock and funk music. That's the cool thing about it. It's so versatile, which is why it stuck around and stayed so popular. So maybe you're thinking, hey, I want to try that. Well, if you are, the alto sax is usually where most people start. It's a good size, not too big. You'll need a neck strap to help hold it up, and you'll want to work on good posture so you can breathe right. But with a little bit of practice every day, you could be well on your way to finding your own sound. And really, that's the magic of this instrument. From the fast, flying notes of Charlie Parker to the deep, searching soul of John Coltrane, every player finds their own unique voice. It's not just about playing the notes, it's about what you have to say. So that leaves us with just one question. If you picked up a saxophone, what would your voice sound like?